Yeah, I just went to the car dealership to pick up my new Naga hammer with 69 horsepower. A new restaurant opened in Hoboken called Miyazu. I think it's Chinese. I just bought a 72-inch Yamazaki with surround sound for my $9,000 home theater. A new refrigerator's in Uchinako. I begin this comprehensive discussion of Assassin's Creed Shadows so responsibly as to list games that already outshine the entire franchise. Sekiro and Dark Souls 3 are better than Assassin's Creed. Celeste, Minecraft, and Doom Eternal are also better than Assassin's Creed. As far as the Ubisoft flagship is, from the greatest game franchise of all time, it remains my 42nd favorite. Establishing that Assassin's Creed is solid overall, you can begin to ponder how well Shadows stacks up against the rest of the franchise. Due to its focus on practical stealth, decently challenging gameplay, and genuinely entertaining activities, I consider it to be in the upper echelon of Assassin's Creed games, if not among the franchise's best. The first million-dollar question to which I'd have wanted an answer before starting the game is, do two completely different playable characters bring anything to the table without destroying the game? As unnecessary as Yasuke seems, I can see why the development team included him. First and foremost, Yasuke isn't a get-out-of-jail-free card. His brute strength doesn't allow him to bypass all stealth situations. This is primarily because he alerts an entire city to his position as soon as he starts goring people. As the only 7-foot-tall black man in the entire country, he's not exactly hidden. Some have doubted Yasuke's inability to bypass stealth situations. I give fair warning that this game's enemies have faced criticism for their incompetence, and they certainly can be incompetent at times, but they also have guns, swords, and suits of armor. I wouldn't want to provide that equipment to any number of idiots, no matter how few. Furthermore, Yasuke's prowess as an aggressive tank, who taps into an entirely separate arsenal, allows Naue to double down on stealth. If you seek to overpower an enemy in direct combat, you can always swap out Naue for her massive sidekick. Otherwise, you can depend on her fairly exclusively. I view her as the stealthiest assassin in the series, though Arno will always be the best climber. I digress. Does Naue invariably enjoy most of the spotlight as a parkour artist with eagle vision and a hidden blade? Absolutely. As the game's assassin, she's the best option for most activities. For example, I cleared almost all forts as Naue, but Yasuke has his place. Not only do both protagonists have separate activities, but I found Yasuke helpful for both community objectives, whose completion relies on massacring hordes of enemies, and RNG roadside camps, whose isolation promises safety from reinforcements. As the options menu's minute adjustments to difficulty betray, Ubisoft often seeks to please everybody, and this could be why Shadows features two playable characters with exactly opposite playstyles, instead of one character that can't handle both as well simultaneously. Though I wasn't excited to play as two protagonists, it didn't take away from the experience either. You can use Yasuke as often as you like, but I admire the stealth in Shadows. In spite of its complete abandonment of social stealth, Shadows focuses more on practical stealth than many games in the series. What do I mean by social and practical stealth? Social stealth refers to warping the perception of other human beings, hiding in plain sight. This includes sitting between two NPCs on benches like Altair or Ezio, wearing disguises like Aveline or Arno, and blending with a crowd of people in spite of being a Balenciaga model in mysterious white robes. Hitman is a great example of a game that revolves around social stealth. Meanwhile, practical stealth simply refers to the literal act of remaining unseen, crouching, ducking behind cover, hiding in roof gardens, or any other mechanic you'd see in the vast majority of stealth games. Not all stealth games involve social stealth, but they all cover the basics of practical stealth. When I marathoned the Assassin's Creed franchise earlier this year, or tried to, I tapped out after starting Odyssey, I noticed no social stealth in Origins, Odyssey, or Valhalla. You can't sit on a bench or blend with a crowd. Nothing. If enemies catch you, you can't even tap into any kind of escapism because the Layla Hassan trilogy features huge landscapes with almost nothing to climb outside those thoroughly underwhelming cities. Though it also excludes social stealth, Shadows features more in the way of practical stealth than recent predecessors do. Naue can assassinate scores of enemies with a simple arsenal of kunai, shurikens, smoke bombs, and noisemakers, all of which are upgradable via the ability tree, but that's an easy one. That's the bare minimum. The rest of Shadow's success as a stealth experience boils down to going prone and practical darkness. As trivial as going prone may seem, it grants plenty flexibility. allowing Naue to crawl beneath porches and hide in shorter grass or shallow pools of water. More curiously, I'm pretty confident that Shadows is the first Assassin's Creed game in which darkness actually hides you. If not, it's certainly the first game to telegraph that darkness hides you. Harkening back to Splinter Cell's glory days, you may enjoy an edge over guardsmen by disabling lights during night missions. Finally, if enemies happen to catch Naue, her abilities as the best climber since Arno allow her to lose herself in the cities and rough terrain across Azuchi Momoyama, Japan. Thus, you can enjoy the escapism that's frankly unavailable throughout the Layla Hassan trilogy. Unlike many optional objectives in recent Assassin's Creed games, the activities in Shadows are actually fun, and if you don't think they're fun, they're easy. In terms of filler content, Valhalla is the worst offender. Between spammy fights with bears and collecting fish for God, Valhalla is outshined by the closest of its cousins. Instead of overwhelming players with 15 mediocre activities, Shadows handles 8 unique activities pretty well, on top of the usual collectibles, viewpoints, bases, and quests. Both Naue and Yasuke can search for scrolls, honor shrines, navigate tombs, and create sumi aprons with which to decorate the hideout, though the search for scrolls often excludes Yasuke by requiring a climber. All 4 activities involve the searching mechanic that's important to so many games in the franchise. Kujikiri and paths are exclusive to Naue. Kujikiri is ostensibly a form of meditation during which to perform a series of hand gestures like Naruto. I hesitate to call Kujikiri a QuickTime sequence because it involves more dexterity than memorization, but it is a QuickTime sequence insofar as you must press buttons in a certain order to complete the activity. As a Guitar Hero veteran, I welcomed them along with Yasuke's QuickTime sequence-based activity, which I'll discuss in a moment. Paths are much easier to recognize as little parkour challenges, wherein Naue follows a yellow line to treasure. 16 games later, I don't think any Assassin's Creed veteran needs an explanation for these paths. Kata and horse archery are exclusive to Yasuke. To perform a kata is to perform a pedagogical series of strikes with a specific weapon in order to enhance one's combat skills. The game interprets this activity through a mock QuickTime sequence that differs slightly from Naue's Kujikiri. Again, completing kata is possible through dexterity alone, and I think that makes it a little better than the genuine QuickTime sequences all over old-school God of War. Horse archery is much more straightforward. In fact, it's probably one of the easiest tasks in the game. Horse archery is nothing beyond performing archery from a horse. Some trip me up, but most were a breeze. Whichever activity the odd question mark on your map reveals, chances are that you'll enjoy a pleasant break in the action to strengthen your character or amend your loadout. Speaking of which, I'd like to share some highlights from the progression mechanics in Shadows. Instead of offering dozens of vaguely identical high-damage attacks, Shadow's ability tree allows each unique build to pull a lot of weight, with no more than a few meaningfully different abilities. Both protagonists can equip one class ability and 2 weapon abilities. You can neither apply a class ability to a weapon slot, nor apply a weapon ability to a class slot. This is important because it allows players to strategize around fewer confounding factors. Instead of deciding among 20 abilities for 4 slots, you decide only among 2 or 3 for a certain slot. Also, because both protagonists carry 2 weapons at a time, you can immediately swap between 2 sets of weapon abilities. Strategizing through modular constraints is much more manageable than strategizing through absolute freedom, especially when many available moves are so similar. Another problem with many recent Assassin's Creed games is that investing skill points in unhelpful abilities is occasionally the only option. Because there are 3 weapon subtrees for Naue and 5 for Yasuke, you might expect this problem in Shadows as well, but with its assortment of practical passive enhancements, the knowledge subtree offers an infinitely more effective alternative to investing in abilities you might not even use. Increasing critical hit chance might not make much of a difference, but it's more valuable to me than a vault ability or a shuriken, both of which are in the game. I made the most of my misfit skill points by pouring them into the knowledge subtree. Most peripherally, you can equip 2 assistants from your hideout to summon at any time pending a significant cooldown. I didn't find all of them to be pivotal to my success, but there were some effects I really liked. Oniyuri can put people to sleep, Genojo automatically flashbangs enemies upon discovery. This is by far the most helpful assistant ability to my stealth build, and Yagoro repels from the ceiling to stab people in the face on demand. Every gamer understands how central abilities are to a great build, but no AAA blockbuster gets very far without offering the option to fine-tune gear. Not only do transmogs for all pieces of gear become available as soon as Naue meets the blacksmith, but the blacksmith can also engrave custom effects on all rare, epic, and legendary gear. After selecting whatever gear works for you, you can improve it further right away. What's great about the effects of late-game gear is that they're specific without being useless. For example, one of my favorite effects allows Naue's aerial assassinations to remove extra health notches from enemy life bars. The gear Naue equips also impacts the abilities she can use. The katana is necessary to stab enemies through shoji screens, the kusarigama is necessary for rush assassinations that quickly close distance, and the tanto is necessary for all double assassinations. Though I never used the tanto in open combat, I couldn't imagine being half as powerful without it. Favoring the shoji screen and double assassinations, I had to decide consciously to sacrifice usage of the kusarigama. Again, instead of simply deciding which abilities to use from a huge catalog, you make several smaller decisions regarding different types of gear and abilities to build an overall strategy. As for Yasuke, he can equip another 3 melee weapons and 2 ranged weapons. From least damage and fastest speed to most damage and slowest speed, the melee weapons are the long katana, the naginata, and the kanabo. By the way, I used the long katana for 90% of the game because of its speed. Yasuke's ranged weapon can be either a bow or a musket. I suppose the bow is better for a stealthy approach, but if you're Yasuke, you're kidding yourself. So I always use the musket. Besides, you can find a musket with a suppression perk later in the game. Mostly, I admire the way Shadows distributes gear and streamlines the process by which to upgrade gear. One of my biggest problems with Odyssey is that I'd often acquire mountains of common and uncommon items I'd never use because, in spite of their higher levels, they'd never be as good as the high-tier stuff I had found 10 levels earlier. In Shadows, not only is upgrading pieces of gear to your current level logistically easy, but the fact that you only find rare, epic, and legendary gear at later levels means you can use some of the items you find instead of immediately selling them. Once you reach the level cap, cherry-picking the gear you need, upgrading and engraving further all 6 pieces of equipment becomes very easy, not to mention satisfying after investing all that effort in your protagonists. Finally, I can't resist discussing the bold fashion choices you have in this game. Of course, Naue has her signature hood, but she can also wear a straw hat or a creepy mask. Yasuke can wear his signature samurai armor, or you can hook him up with a Ronin fit, which is way cooler. Before discussing how much I like Naue and how well Shadows presents her story, I'd like to point out that the immersive sub is completely different from the infinitely cringier English version. For me, awkward dialogue didn't burden the otherwise cohesive plot. The reason Naue's story succeeds as a compelling narrative isn't because the writing has miraculously improved. Rather, it's because the narrative shows us how she struggles and grows through her experiences as a young assassin on her journey to masterhood. We've watched Arno and Ezio go through the same struggles, and that's why we love them too. You might also compare Naue to protagonists who weren't so compelling. That the assassins with the least compelling stories are also the oldest is no surprise. Bayek and Eivor were blah because they already knew who they were. Though they had growing to do within the Order of Assassins, their stories more or less begin in the middle of their lives, so we don't watch them stumble or struggle as much. Bayek does accidentally stab his own child and cut his finger off, though. That was not good. I don't mean to dismiss Yasuke's story. His also does a great job of presenting his very different struggle as a lonely outsider who seeks to make his way in a foreign land that happens to be his best bet. As with any AAA or quadruple A, however many A's there are now, ARPG, there's plenty of hi how are you stuff in the middle of the game. But for the most part, the main campaign is pretty engaging in terms of narrative, especially in comparison to many recent Assassin's Creed games. For those of us who hate the story, I think it's really because of the slog in the middle. The last topic I want to cover is kind of stupid, but also kind of fun. I enjoyed customizing my sick base. Not only is the layout and appearance of the base pretty flexible, but upgrades to build have a tangible impact on work in the field. One room increases the potency of rations such that fewer rations heal more health. Social media apps like Reddit are inundated with Shadows players eager to share their cool bases with fellow assassins. The custom base serves as an extra avenue of progression, unlike anything I've seen since the Desmond arc. If you're a fan of Assassin's Creed overall, you'll 100% get a kick out of Shadows, and you might even consider it among the best as I do. I would say it might be my favorite, and if it is my favorite, then Mirage is a close second. At least on the hardest difficulty, finishing virtually everything in the game takes about 120 hours, so I have to believe it's a bang for my buck if nothing else. I don't know if I'll review another Assassin's Creed game simply because I recognize how much I love them in the first place, and I probably won't say anything too different from what I've already said about other Assassin's Creed games. But that's it for Shadows, and I hope you enjoy it. Without further ado, I yield the floor to the highly literate scholars of the comments section.